Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Friday, August 27th. Let's hop in. Yeah, again, starting a little bit later than I'd like. Mostly I could say I was up late last night working on a side project that required me to sit in a different chair for far too long, and it just wrecked my back. Like, I am in so much pain right now. It's like sitting in chairs for like 8 hours a day, like most people can do in school and work, is ridiculously not doable for me in my back anymore. It is shocking how bad this is. Here we can also see I did not really succeed well on anything. And I don't really have anything to reroll. I guess I could try and reroll this. It's a 40, but I might get a 20 or 30 if I did. I mean, I think at a certain point, just trying to get more overlap in general probably is the goal. If we could get 3 Forestcraft or Bloodcraft victories, then we could switch over to some more victories. Odds of getting 7 victories, though, fairly low. I did play a little bit of Binding of Isaac Rebirth, but not a lot. If anything, playing on normal, I am now being able to get all the way to the Cathedral and Isaac fairly consistently. And I have like 3 more challenges. A lot of the challenges I'm just doing off screen and then coming back when I'm about to beat the boss, because challenges are just so awkward anyways. But the increasing limiting factor as far as unlocking something seems to either be the fact that I'm not doing enough regular runs to put in coins in the donation machine, or to die potentially 100 times, which is what I think one of the items is required. I also need to unlock the Lost, which I suppose at that point, if I did unlock the Lost, I could then have a great excuse to die 100 times, since the Lost is a one-hit kill secret character anyways. Yeah. And even in Repentance, there's a section where you kind of play as the Lost, as a character, for a brief second. And even then, when you take damage, you don't actually die. So, yeah, I think Repentance fixes a lot more than I really realized. And so I'm still trying to e-beg, basically, trying to get people to gift me Repentance DLC, Afterbirth, and Afterbirth Plus DLC for Binding of Isaac Rebirth. That way I could cover the game a little bit better. I guess what we could do is we could come over here and see if we just played default fairy deck instead of the one I built. So once again, I'm, I guess, perpetually behind, since I spent all yesterday on the side project, and I have more side projects still. I have yet to get back to the irrigation system project, which hopefully works. Like, I'm real tired of failing on that one. I have like a bookshelf I need to put together. My server I haven't touched in a very long time, and I could definitely use some improvements and get that working. So, yep. Lots of things to do. I've been kind of watching a lot of TV lately too, which definitely don't have time to watch TV. Let's see. It's a little premature to play that, but I guess we'll do that. So yeah, as usual, we'll want to try and rush through the news today on a Friday. Fridays tend to be lesser viewed anyways. And maybe we'll do some follow list cleanup, but highly unlikely to. Like, pretty much there has to be not only no event happening, what there has to be is an event about to happen before a live stream. Something that actually actively reduces the number of announcements and video games coming out on Steam. So right before E3, right before Gamescom, right before maybe Tokyo Game Show a little bit, but probably not even that much. And I don't know if there's any other events that are even big enough to create a slowdown in news. And it doesn't really affect people that are just putting out garbage games on Steam, because they will continuously do that regardless. This, and this. And then, do we evolve that? So yeah, we have a game on Steam here called The Shape of Time, which looks like nothing. Just ridiculous shapes, artistic ideas. In a lot of ways, I don't know how to criticize. As a fan who feels like they can criticize a lot of shapes and art pieces, I don't know how to criticize something that is going to be so abstract like this. I guess abstract is the right word, where it's just shapes upon shapes upon shapes. I would almost feel like I would need to pull out a golden triangle or something to, like a golden ratio French curve type assistance to see if the shapes and the curves were of good form. Watching it in action, where you see it is basically a image that is getting 2D slices taken out through motion, I think that's probably even worse. Like, that really does make it feel like somebody is just showing off a effect they figured out. And I could definitely see, excuse me, I could definitely see a case where somebody just buys some pre-bought animations and then tweaks the code just ever so slightly to make those pre-part animations look the way they do in that. On the other hand, it is a free-to-play game. It supports French full-length audio and English interface and subtitles, whatever that really means. It doesn't require VR, so if it was an attempt to make money, it kind of failed. If anything, it just kind of feels like it's a portfolio project for some artist who decided to put it on Steam. And I could definitely see artists spending $100, which is basically nothing, to put their 3D renders on something like Steam. And arguably, Steam and Valve should curate that either into a new category or not allow it at all. Steam has already said they really don't want movies unless the movies are directly connected and related to a game. So something like the Dead Space animated movies makes sense to be on Steam, whereas just Casablanca doesn't really make sense. Let's see. Do this, do this, do this. Evolve here.
I won't let you get away.
So sparkly. Yeah.
Hit that, I guess.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
And then the turn. I could definitely see an argument to the idea of Steam also being a platform for movies and music. That is basically what the Google Play Store and the iTunes App Store all became. I wouldn't, but I could also see an argument for specializing specifically in video games and not going into those other venues. And if anything, it does inspire a small bit of confidence in Steam and Valve that they are at least slightly focused on video games and catering their experience for video gamers instead of just trying to shift something like G4 TV into a channel that just shows cops and cheaters all the time to get a larger market share. Moving on, we have Midnight Calling, Valeria Collector's Edition. $8.99, English full audio from Big Fish Game, another hidden object game. Here we have Dream Girls, which was tagged sexual content and nudity, so I'll make sure there's nothing there. It's another square puzzle game with anthropomorphic anime girls. And yeah, so you have a cowgirl, you have a ram/sheep girl, you have what is probably a wolf girl, would be my guess, or snow leopard girl maybe. Yeah, you have a monkey, which the danger of racism here, the more tanned anime girl is the monkey, but whatever, monkeys are brown. The actual puzzles though, kind of nothing. So yeah, not really anything special other than the fact that it once again resets the clock as far as games that seem to have adult content in it. It's 84 cents, English, Chinese, and Russian. It does have an 18 plus adult only content DLC, so it is censored by default with the patch to uncensor, which, yeah, okay, that makes sense. The CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki, retweeted Rhett and Link, who are doing an all-day charity live stream on September 22nd. She pretty much hasn't promoted any small-time or even medium YouTuber in the entire history of me following her. And then for the vast majority of her time, she doesn't seem to post anything about YouTube at all, which would be kind of fair if you thought she was just working hard in the background to make YouTube actually work and be successful. Arguably, though, I would say that's not the case at all, because YouTube, under her leadership, or what seems to be frankly a lack of leadership and a disinterest in actually doing a job, in favor of just rubbing elbows with the rich and famous. But yeah, amongst her leadership, YouTube has not become a better place for creative people. And yeah, I was watching, I believe it's How to Cook That on YouTube, where it is a growing in success. Maybe she's an independent chef, but maybe she's not. I wouldn't be surprised if her channel actually has a lot of secret support from some production company, because almost all the successful channels actually are designed to look like they're being run by one or two people, and when there's really a production company of 100 people and millions of dollars behind them. But the point that the main lady on How to Cook That made is, because the YouTube videos of cooking weird things that don't really work get dislikes and get a lot of people to comment that they're fake, the fake recipes, and sometimes the recipes are very dangerous. Because they get a lot of engagement, and because YouTube is all about engagement, they get promoted a lot more, which is squeezing out the small, actually creative chefs out there who are creating new food hacks and things like that. And even the small creators, when they do create a new food hack, it's just incredibly easy for the bigger, more successful, because of the algorithm, channels to simply steal that idea without spending any of the time and energy doing the research and investigating it or being creative. But it creates a even growing issue in that, because you now have less actual creative people on YouTube, because they've given up and been squashed out of the limelight, so they can't get any views. It means now there's even less actual working food hacks for the big channels, the fake food hack channels, to steal. So now they are just making more and more increasingly ridiculous food hacks and increasingly ridiculous videos, and just they've poisoned the well effectively on the entire category of YouTube. And that's not just food hacks, that's kind of true for a lot of content on YouTube. What it really screams is that we need either a YouTube for indies, or just some different algorithm. But the idea of a YouTube for indies, where if you got 1 million subscribers, you get either graduated or kicked off the platform and moved to a different platform completely, would be interesting. But how do you manage that? How do you manage 1 billion indie people who are making 1 or 2 videos in their entire life versus one person who has 1 billion views who's making maybe 100 videos? It's way easier to manage the one person and get them to follow the rules or do what you want them to do. And at a certain level, that is the truth of YouTube. Is it's not just about them highlighting the best content creators, it's about them controlling the narrative, whatever the narrative is about.
I walk my own path. Just don't.
I'm home.
Hey, let's play. Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of has nothing to do with anything other than to say I needed a reason to vent once again about YouTube, I guess. I didn't realize I needed that, but yeah, once I started talking, it does. Yeah, YouTube still kind of sucks. Unfortunately, none of the spin-off shows or providers have really succeeded either. I know I tried a couple of them, and I know I have some things that are just like automatically uploading to some other services, but I don't log into those services. I have no idea how many views I'm getting on something. Maybe I'm on like DTube, maybe that's a porn site, I don't even know. I know I tried a couple of them, if they were automated. For a while there, I had automated uploads from YouTube to Twitch. Twitch never got anywhere with that. Like, best case scenario I can imagine is that at some point at some point there will be a scenario where
Life upon the land. Don't hurt me.
yeah, what am I trying to say? Yeah, my best hope is maybe at some point there'll be a scenario where the kids just are tired of being on YouTube and they'll decide to create and move their audience to a different service. And as stupid as it may be, I guess I would jump over to that new service. But then kids are pretty fickle and jump from service to service anyways. And I'm not sure kids want to watch my content either. I suppose if all the kids went to a different service, and by kids in this case I mean anyone who is from birth to about 14, 16 years old, if they all left YouTube en masse to a new service, it might drastically change the audience and who is actually watching videos on YouTube, to the point where the algorithm might quickly shift into showing more intelligent content or more mature content, or at least adult targeted content. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Iraq War, which, yeah, I don't really see a lot here that makes this feel like this is specifically an Iraqi war or an Iraq war. Yeah. Like dark buildings that look very much just like asset flips. That does not really strike me as any noticeable buildings that would be in Iraq. And then you're seeing cars and trucks that just kind of look like asset flips. $17.99. It's supposed to be taking place in Baghdad 2003. I kind of disbelieve that this dark vision is supposed to be Baghdad. Yeah, to me it just seems like it's a low effort asset flip game that has also tried to sell itself on somewhat politically inflammatory subjects, but I don't know how politically inflammatory it really is even at this point. In general, you kind of chalk up the United States actions in the Middle East over the course of the past, probably going back 100 years, as being one big like cluster F, for lack of a better term. Then you break down the Iraq War versus the Afghanistan War versus any of the other wars. If anything, I would say, from my vague recollection, I think the initial push of the Iraq War was actually quite successful. And I don't feel like even now Iraq failed miserably compared to other attempts. Moving on, Video Game Chronicles has the UK-made game Viewfinder winning Europlay 2021, which is, quote, the Eurovision of video games. Although I have never even heard of Europlay, and this has to be a point to point out as far as VideoGameChronicles.com is in that they talked about this when it won a UK award to go on to be the representative in Europlay, but they really didn't talk about any of the competitors. So, like, even here in this article, as you're looking at it, it's not telling you what the 14 other titles were, whereas you could have definitely had a much better article and much more informative bit of news to say, here is the 13 or I guess 14 other entrants. Let's talk about them. Let's link to them. Let's have 14 articles covering these games. And this news came out incredibly quickly. Like, it was Wednesday that they said it won the UK award, and now on Friday they're saying it won the Eurovision Europlay award. And that's just no way to have even a week-long news narrative that you could easily have had. Whereas comparison to that, any kind of like Game of the Year, E3 awards, or Gamescom awards, they announced those potential candidates fairly early. They usually ask the audience to vote on it. There's always articles talking about each game and mentioning everything about the games. Usually there's at least a small article about every game. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called The Stone of God, which looks like it's just an RPG game. Doesn't look terrible, but also doesn't look particularly interesting. Kind of feels like it's a girl-only universe. $6.29, English only. There's some irony in the fact that you could easily tell a story where it was all male characters and nobody would probably even notice in most cases. And yet, if you did the exact opposite, it would become very, very noticeable. I guess that heavily comes down to the fact that every society, or almost every society in the United States, almost every society in the world has a kind of male-forward presentation. The Amazonians might be about the only society we've ever heard about, and it's questionable how much of those stories are even true. But yeah, the Amazonians are about the only society we've ever even heard about that potentially had a female forward presentation. There are plenty of societies around the world where women are covered up in some way or another, whether it's burqa or just some other form of clothing physically, or just covered up societally, in which they're expected to mostly be in the home, mostly be hidden away. Moving on though. Dr. Disrespect says he's suing Twitch after being banned from the platform. This is from Video Games Chronicles. I don't know if this is really news. At a certain point, I guess it is slightly news because he is a fairly big and successful streamer, and he is suing Twitch, which theoretically started as a video game platform, but arguably is not really that. So, I mean, it is getting very close to the edges of not being news at all, or just not being video game news and being more a legal bit of news. Okay.
The uncharted desert awaits.
We hit that with the strike, and then you hit that with the strike, and then you hit that. Let's see. Video Games Chronicles has the Halo Xbox Series X is already sold out and being listed on eBay for $1,000 plus. This is definitely a problem that keeps happening as far as scalping and resellers in general. But I don't really even know the solution here. It's like, at one point you have a push by big corporations and oligarchs to want to be the only ones that could possibly profit and sell something. And the idea in general of just trying to get rid of the legal right to resell any product and make any kind of profit. On the other hand, you have what people would clearly describe as price gouging.
Unable to compute.
But is price gouging really an issue if it's not, if it's a want and not a need? Like, nobody needs to own the Halo Xbox Series X.
Salvation.
That is definitely a want, and I think at that point you probably should just say buyer beware, for lack of a better system,
Unable to compute.
and just let the people buy it quickly and resell it just fine. The only thing I guess you could complain about or at least since I don't have a better solution or suggestion, would be the only thing you could complain about is
Nice
Microsoft is not serving its customer very well by not implementing enough of a system to prevent resellers, and eBay does not service its customers very well in the sense that it does not I don't even think I'm supposed to be playing Bloodcraft. It doesn't ensure that people aren't scamming or marking things up at ridiculous prices. There could easily be a system where everything just has a specific price range on eBay, and you cannot go above that specific price range without having a history of being very well received on similar sales or similarly priced items. That way, a brand new eBay account can only list a Xbox Series X for, say, 50% markup over what the suggested retail price is, and then if it has a lot of, say, 1,000 positive reviews on sales for similarly priced items, then it can start to move up its prices. At a certain point, that's eBay price fixing, and maybe that's illegal too, but that's kind of what it needs to be a better service. And yeah, even if Microsoft does have a perfect system, a perfect like random lottery system, you reserve, you sign up to potentially reserve and buy a Series X. By them making it limited in the first place, you kind of know this was always going to be a problem.
Mankind's tenacity will exterminate you, vermin.
So
Melt under my touch.
yeah, I don't know if there's really a way to ever fix that. Video Games Chronicle has an article. The Epic Games Store next free title has been announced. It will be Yoku's Island Express. Will be replaced Automachef Chef and Saints Row the Third Remastered, which is Yoko game is definitely one that I've kept an eye on to try and figure out whether I actually want to play it or not. We'll talk about Saints Row. There's quite a decent amount of stuff to talk about when we hit that story. Guess we'll do this,
Excited as I am. Well, are you?
You
and
don't
then
belong.
this,
Melt
and then
under
this.
my touch.
I'm so excited.
Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Pokemon has backtracked on its decision to roll back some Pokestop distance requirements. 80 meters will be the base interaction radius following player backlash. Which,
Catch you up.
okay. I don't know how many people are still playing Pokemon Go, particularly with the whole pandemic and all, but for the audience that's still there, they should do their very best to not wreck the experience. Well, I guess you just have to play this.
Man of melons and potion
It's
fruit.
just not worth it to
Gonna scoop out your guts.
to not play a card.
I'm so excited.
Video Games Chronicle says a Call of Duty Vanguard alpha trick reportedly shows Activision pulled its logo, which, I mean, comes to a surprise of no one. But
Seek what is not there.
that Activision would have had their logo in the game, and then they had a whole bunch of bad press, so then they very quickly removed the logo
Is near.
from the game. There was obviously no talk or thought to remove the logo before the controversies arose. Let's see. To damage all allies and enemies.
Are you as excited as I am?
Okay, what do we want to do?
Freshness guaranteed.
Hit that, I guess.
You don't
Hit
belong
that.
here. I'm not afraid of the light.
And I
Melt
guess
under
hit
my
that.
touch.
A fitting end.
Okay. Should I evolve something? Probably not.
I'm so excited.
Video Games Chronicle says Ratchet and Clank Rifts could have easily been done in the PS3, claims the Traveler's Tale founder. He says Insomniac's claim that only the PS5 could pull it off is misleading.
There is not a soul without sin.
As I understand it, they talked way too much about the Rifts as an idea because they really are just kind of transition points. Very much like the portals in Portal 1, which was done a long time ago, and notably the portals in Portal 1 worked fine on the orange box on the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. So yeah, there is, I think,
Scatter like the blossom.
a point there. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some level of truth to it also, in the sense
By your will, O Lord.
that
Gonna scoop out your guts.
yeah, there's some truth to it, probably, that the portals did need the PlayStation 5, in that they probably had the graphics and some visual effects turned up really high that couldn't have been done with the PS4. But yeah, that's kind of true for almost any aspect of any game, is that the new console, PlayStation 5, could probably do the graphics a little bit better than the PlayStation 4 and allow a few more pixels, a few more polygons to be on the screen. I would say the bigger story to take from the Ratchet and Clank games is that it once again was one of those mainstream giant bomb, particularly, but mainstream video game media darling type games that was heavily promoted up until its release, and then completely just disappears from any general conversation.
Check out my fancy footwork. Get ready to fly. Stop.
In a lot of ways, the the entirety of the argument is kind of mute and kind of just petty and pointless. Like,
I will rise.
it seems like it really is just stemming from John Barton either having some conflict with Ratchet and Clank's current developers more than anything else.
Good enough.
And even if it was an earnest conversation, while I'm just skimming the headline and not really reading it, like, all you really have is one programmer potentially knowing how to program or figuring out how to program way better than another programmer, which that kind of happens all the time.
Will rise again.
Flash of metal, a silent night.
Let your soul succumb to the void.
Okay.
See you all next festival.
Interesting. So this is going to restore my health without dealing 6 to my leader. Interesting. So next we have a feature from Video Games Chronicle. They have a hands-on with Martha's Dead. They say it's an extremely dark but compelling mystery, which Video Games Chronicle doesn't have a lot of hands-on or early access type things. I see 2 screenshots here, and you really can't take much from that. So this is kind of a great example of an article not being particularly that useful, and why I tend to not read or follow those. Netflix has started including mobile games as part of its subscriptions in Poland. It's in very, very early days, the streaming service says. So there's 2 mobile games. One is Stranger Things 3 and the other is Stranger Things 1984. And it does seem like it is straight up just the Netflix app is going to be a third app store specifically for Netflix themed games, at least to start with, or Netflix owned games. And yeah, I assume it will just work on Android and maybe nothing else. We could do 3 damage to this, and we couldn't kill that at that point.
Our bonds restored.
+1 in Storm.
The soul has been reaped.
Well, that's not gonna win. Definitely. Overwatch is changing McCree's name due to the Activision Blizzard harassment lawsuit. The character was named after an employee who left after the wake of the lawsuit. McCree is named after Jesse McCree, who was the lead designer of Diablo 4 also. And I don't know if there's any accusations actually specific to Jesse McCree, or if this is just straight up we're removing names of people because they left the company and didn't stand by the company, because it may very well be that this is Activision Blizzard being petty and removing the names of people because they left the company. Because like, you got to be real careful here. It would be very easy to misinterpret or misconstrue this to say that Jesse McCree was guilty of something, when he may very well have just left the company because he didn't want to deal with all the nonsense that's happening around there. A lot of people are very obsessive and anal retentive about just wanting to do their job I don't even know if you call it obsessive or anal retentive, really. A lot of people just want to do their job in a job, and they don't want to have to deal with nonsense and petty, like, high school shenanigans happening. And so if you had been insulated from that somehow and worked in one small office where there was no kinds of harassment going on at all, and it was just like a really good place to work, and then all of a sudden you find out your parent company is just full of abusers, and that your name's going to get dragged in the mud, and every conversation about with any potential future employer is going to center around that. Getting out does seem to make a lot of sense for people. Now, I would argue that it was a mistake in the first place to let Jesse McCree name a character after himself. That smacks of egotism in the first place and arrogance, but it also is just not a good move legally, because like you can't own the copyright or own a trademark to a name of a character if that name is based off another person. Yeah. So I would have said it looked bad at the very least, and would have obviously looked bad at the very least before even any of the other issues had appeared. Moving on, Saints Row reboot is dividing fans as Volition says it won't back down. The new game's reveal trailer currently has more dislikes than likes on YouTube. Part of the complaint I heard, and I haven't been paying much attention of this, was that it was CGI. And people were probably disliking it because of that. Let's see. Instead of seeing actual potential gameplay. See, yeah, this does feel very CGI-ish. So, yeah, this feels like an animated cartoon, and unless the game actually looks like that. There's very little purple going on here, and they're introducing this like orange, I guess, side gang. A little bit of purple. And a little bit of silliness. You have this girl with glasses, which that's a fetish for some Japanese anime characters. They like the dark-haired girl with glasses style. Then you have a different girl here. You will have a custom character creator, and so maybe it feels a little off that you're that they're highlighting specific characters so much, particularly knowing that the fun characters that do show up in Saints Row tend to be very over the top and very ridiculous. Where this kind of feels a little serious. There was, I think, maybe some complaint that this girl was the main girl, or at least there was complaints that there were complaints. Maybe those complaints weren't real. That it was a female lead character. I don't see that. I don't see a legitimate reason this early on to complain about that. What I could say, though, is the Saints Row series is in a very awkward position, to say the least. Because what they did is they started with a fairly generic but good GTA ripoff. and by the time you're at Saints Row 3 or Saints Row Get Out of Hell, you are just so over the top and so ridiculous that there really isn't a lot of room to go further in that direction. So now they're having to bring it back to being realistic, and that probably feels off in the narrative of most people probably only having played Saints Row 3 or Get Out of Hell. It also was a game that notoriously gave giant purple dildo bats to video game journalists, and then also had that giant purple dildo bat on in the game as a silly weapon. And we're not seeing any of that in this trailer. We're not seeing any kind of ridiculousness, and we're not seeing any ridiculous weapons. So it does kind of feel like the new Saints Row reboot from this first trailer feels like it is Saints Row in name only. And then you run into the problem of changing sentimentalities in the fact that I don't know if you can do the jokes and the giant purple dildo bats that once were considered funny enough for the Porky style comedy that it was going for. You're running into a very early form of Duke Nukem Forever, basically, where that comedy I think can be done, but you have to work fairly hard to make it work. And there is definitely a lot of backlash that is going to happen. So yeah, I don't know how you fix that. I really don't know how you fix that. Whereas, let's jump over here. Here is the Get Out of Hell trailer that it suggested, where you have a giant devil and then a smaller succubus in kind of a dress. I think this is a trailer. And in all fairness, this is also a CG trailer. Let's see. This may not have been an actual trailer, but this may have just been a YouTube video that it suggested. But yeah, here you have, I guess, the titular Gat character. Way more glowing neon purple. Way more ridiculous, like, energy in his arm. Way more ridiculous depictions in general. Yeah. So, yeah. Get Out of Hell, I believe, it was the latest thing. And before Saints Row reboot, and yeah. That seems weird. That I don't know how you shift the feeling of a game that drastically from one game to the exact next game, or one DLC for the game to the exact next game. Maybe Saints Row reboot learns from some mistakes as far as GTA Online and Crackdown 3, which is also kind of an over-the-top ridiculous series. But I wouldn't really hold out a lot of hope that the reboot feels much like the Saints Row series. Now, arguably, maybe there isn't that much to the Saints Row series to say or do in the first place. I've never gotten around to playing any of it. in all fairness, so I should mention that. Who's this guy?
Such is temperance.
You doing this?
These wheels turn for. Come at me, well.
Don't forget to snag some merch.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you can do something like Saints Row. I also haven't really played the GTA games, and if I was gonna try and play the GTA games, I kind of want to play GTA 1 as a spotlight, and then play GTA 2 as a spotlight, and then play GTA 3 as the specific thing.
Thus, the world.
This is gonna be crazy, but I think I might be able to pull off a victory here.
The
If we
hunt
do
has only
this,
begun.
Horns also make good weapons.
and then we do this, and then this, and then we play this. If he can do 2 damage to me, I lose. If I can attack next turn with this, I win. Otherwise, I need to basically do 1 damage.
Life deserves a precious death. How's this for a transformation?
Don't make me think.
Yep.
More jewels, more. Raise the price.
See, evolve this follower, give +2 to any other allied followers.
Ready? Here goes into the blue and beyond.
Let's just hope that this
Going in
works.
my sight. Astral Hauser.
And can we evolve anything? No.
I'll strike
So you
true.
like attack here.
Thank you so much for that.
That does nothing. Ooh, but I can attack again. But then we just tie.
Nice marksmanship.
Which tie means I lose. Interesting. Let's see. Moving on. Video Games Chronicle has a review for No More Heroes 3. It's a faithful follow-up, it says, for better or worse. Pseudo51 has said that the No More Heroes series is over. It's been, I guess, 11 years since No More Heroes 2 came out.
Ruler of the
I could
sky.
definitely see being done with the series because there's not like a lot around the concept in the first place. A best case scenario, what is this trailer? This is not anything to do with No More Heroes. Oh yes, this was the initial announcement of No More Heroes, making it look like an anime. Yeah, just kind of a surprise twist announcement that didn't reveal itself until the very end. Yeah, there wasn't a lot around that, and the concept itself was built around the Wiimote, which, yeah, without the Wiimote, the concept kind of falls apart. What I think would be much better suited for Pseudo51 is for him to take his sentimentality and his form of humor and storytelling and refocus it into more modern gameplay mechanics. Grasshopper, the company that works on it, definitely could do better learning how to make games that actually work with modern controllers well and make things better animated. You don't need Travis Touchdown as a character. You don't need any of the enemies that mostly all got killed as characters. You can make a whole new collection of other characters. I mean, all of them were kind of cliched parodies of stereotypes anyways. There is definitely a danger that the overt anime-esque sexuality of some of the jokes and characters in the No More Heroes series are getting censored, and there might be some sentiment around the idea that they just can't make games like that, or they can't sell games like that anymore. No More Heroes kind of feels a lot like a budget Yakuza game, whereas now maybe it doesn't really need, there doesn't need to be a budget Yakuza game, because even the indies can make a decently sized Yakuza game. Also, No More Heroes tended to have some grindiness in it. At least the first game did. Maybe the second game, which I never played. There is definitely still a question as to, is No More Heroes 1, 2, and 3 actually playable on PC? I'd like to go back and play them all, but even in that, I would try to have an abridged story. It really is one of those games that would really do well as an abridged story. It would do well as a Final Fantasy IV style reboot, and maybe we'll start to see more Final Fantasy reboot style reboots happening. It wasn't Final Fantasy IV that they're rebooting. It's either 7 or 13 that they're rebooting. I think it might be 13. But yeah, just rebooting things and changing things on the way, making a more abridged experience, getting away from the grindiness, I think does have certainly an appeal to the West. And as far as reviews from websites like Video Game Chronicles, I don't want to get back into the habit of saying, like, this is 3 out of 5 stars, and then reading that the negatives are the open worlds are still dull and barren, and some more eccentric moments don't quite hit like they used to. Yeah, changing sentimentality again. It really is just like the same issue, certainly, with a Saints Row reboot, is that the 90s edgy gamer bro and Porky style college frat boy mentality is just not acceptable. Even if you're not a part of that mentality, it's become less acceptable to even enjoy that mentality from a distance. Because yeah, I would never consider myself a college frat boy style person, but I can certainly look at somebody and laugh at that person more than laugh with that person for their ridiculous shenanigans. But also, I saw those things, the college frat boy mentality, I saw those things on movies like Porky's, where it's not real and it's exaggerated and it's done in a safe way. If I had been seeing those things in front of my face when I was in school, with actual college frat boys sneaking into a shower and peeking through a hole, A, that would be ridiculously pathetic, but B, I would definitely have felt different about it. And I definitely would feel even more different about it now than even then.
I never get a chance to speak. I see something.
So yeah. I think a new Pseudo 51 series definitely sounds more more interesting, assuming he is going to make a new Pseudo 51 series. Of course, I think Pseudo 51 also had the Deadly Premonition series. So, like, every game he's ever made has been really weird, and new weird is good, but I'd like to see whatever he makes actually be good too. Like, every Pseudo 51 game tends to also have that caveat of, oh, it's weird and it's fun because it's weird, but then it's also terrible because they don't know how to program games. Like, I'd like to see potentially an angel investor type foundation just give a couple $1 million to them to hire low-level employees who can just make the games actually playable, and just let Pseudo 51 be very much like Edmund McMillan is with The Binding of Isaac, where he does no programming at all and he just throws out the ideas and the ideas get implemented. Of course, that's hard to pull off without having somebody throw out a bunch of ideas and then it becoming a quagmire to figure out how to actually execute on those ideas. Moving on, we're not getting through the news very fast today. An EA exec says toxic environments are inevitable inside large publishers. Quote, but you have to take action. We have had to take some significant actions and dismiss employees over the last several years, which is kind of a no duh. It would be really weird if you hadn't fired somebody for something. Inevitable is a bad word to use in most cases. I don't agree that large publishers just inevitably have to become toxic environments. If that is true, let's just take it as truth. Then all you're really making an argument for is all big business should be illegal. Which, okay, I'll buy into that argument. No more large publishers. All publishers must be limited down to less than 1,000 employees and less than $1 billion in total gross revenue. All else has to be split off into its own separate company. That works fine. That works perfectly fine for me. Toxic environments are not inevitable, though. Let's just be honest here. They are not. People choose to be crappy to people. Businesses are run and made up of people. We have yet to get to the point where we have AIs running corporations, and the AIs are intentionally making the environments toxic. Human beings, as limited as they might be in many, many other factors, do have the capability to be silent or not be crappy. So, yeah. And there's nothing stopping any corporation, regardless of whatever late-stage capitalism religion they preach, there's nothing stopping a corporation from making no profit, just breaking even, so that they can spend more money of their profit or more time of their job to ensure that the experience is not and then have a toxic experience for the workers. What do I want to play? I guess we just start with that. Let's see. Metro Dread, I'm not going to show it, but it has a 2-minute trailer introducing a new foe. I guess I have to just assume that Metroid Dread is actually going to get released. Because like it probably is just locked down and ready to be close to ready to be released right now. They don't obviously want to have another scenario where you have Metroid Prime 3 announced and then stuck in development hell and then just not mentioned at all for several years. they also kind of have to have something called Metroid Prime 3 come out, because they're Nintendo and it's just too much of a blow to their own namesake if something doesn't come out.
My
But
domain
that,
reaches to the end of the skies.
let's see. Video Games Chronicle has this article we already talked about. No More Heroes series is over. Its creator says, quote, "Goodbye, Travis Touchdown." Almost certainly by the third game he dies. Like that's what you would want to have happen, is that he would die in a fairly definitive way, and you wouldn't want to then send him to hell or heaven or something like that. You would just kind of want it to end. But I think part of the problem also with the No More Heroes series is it has the power creep issue, and that you're fighting galactic enemies. So at a certain point you're going down the path of Dragon Ball, where after you've fought the best, most strongest fighters in all the universe, then they're having to fight gods, and then they're having to introduce other gods that are even more powerful than the current gods. It's just constantly power creeping and power creeping and power creeping because of that.
All I need's an opening and you're toast.
Hey, let's play.
Let's see.
I'll strike true.
And then I guess we'll
The hunt has only begun.
evolve this and clash some people up.
Game. One helping of this and it's nighty night for you.
What is this weird feeling?
And then we have a Video Games Chronicles article that was later. New Saints Row video offers a look at actual gameplay following fan criticism. Volition gives players a proper first look at the game in action. Which, yeah, okay. Let's see what that looks like. See, there is a noticeable amount of dislike of anyone of brown skin tint at all. And it's not just Western racists. It's not just people in the United States or anything. There's like significant backlash and push that I see on all forms of websites whenever anyone is identified, whether self-identified or other, as being brown-skinned of any sort. So there might be some small part of that. There, you saw the door open and you see a whole bunch of white guys. There might be a little bit of white guilt going on here. But also, you kind of have a weird thing about gangs in particular being built around races. So, and here you got a guy with a man bun. So yeah, this seems like this is going to be set more in a like southern area, New Mexico, Texas type. I guess if that's Route 66, that'd be New Mexico type area, which might explain a different layout of the group of the Saints Rows, and the Saints in general tend to expand. I would have assumed with the purple and the name the Saints, they were all from like New Orleans originally, and they were going from that New Orleans thought, and there is a decent amount of African Americans in New Orleans. So yeah, I could see some of that. In a lot of ways, the green and purple just kind of feels like they're Joker henchmen, and that this is a concept stealing from Joker's color palette. There's a lot of talking to the screen. Obviously, they did not have a lot of in-game content. But I would say you're probably getting at most 20% of of the dislikes are just blatant, unabashed racism, if even that much. This looks much more like a Saints Row game for the small points it's showing. And if anything, I think they are establishing a bit more of a story than really was focused on in Saints Row 2 or Saints Row 3, where there are rival gangs. And I imagine there will be some cool cutscenes and all, but the running and gunning is kind of the central part of the character. Now, this lady is probably the voice actor as well as the face model. So, if she is going to be your main point of interaction, even if you're not playing as her, her performance is going to kind of drastically change people's reception as far as how the game goes, or how the reception of the game goes. But yeah, I would say I feel like that secondary trailer is way better at showing off what I think people who play Saints Row want, as someone who hasn't played Saints Row. But I also have to caveat that with saying I have no clue.
This one's for my
Really,
family.
no clue at all
Come on.
as far as what Saints Row players really want, even if there is kind of I really am not certain there is even a large community of Saints Row players. It may very well be a case that any audience for the Saints Row series has long since dispersed and dried up and moved on to other games and are just not going to come back to Saints Row. Saints Row in particular, if I vaguely recall, was added and became popular because it was on the Xbox or the PlayStation, I think the Xbox, at a time when Grand Theft Auto was only on PC. And so now that GTA, even though there isn't a new GTA, is on every platform, I think it's on the Switch even, there may not be a market for a Saints Row series.
Did I want gold again?
Moving on, Call of Duty's Vanguard alpha test is now live for PlayStation owners, if you're interested in that. Gametsu has the Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga launching in spring of 2022. I think we had already talked about that. We can see that there are studs here. We can see that there are minifigs here. We can see that the CG looks interesting. If anything, I think what you can see here is there's kind of a dark line around the hand and a dark line around the hand here. And what that implies to me is that they have either done some really deep level 3D scanning of minifigs to make them look a lot more like minifigs with details on them than they did in the past. And then you can see like mud on the feet because they're in the mud, so they're adding effects to have these minifig characters actually look like minifig characters. The hair here also low polygon because a minifig's head would be low polygon. And then you see actual Lego pieces connecting to Lego pieces here. Of course, I am more from the perspective that I would much prefer to see improved performance over anything else as far as the Lego Star Wars games. Like, I'm not really looking for a ton of new features as they remake them. And I'm not really looking for a ton of improved graphics. I just want good performance. This is going to have the running and gunning stuff that definitely wasn't in the Lego Sky Wars. Lego Star Wars game, since that was the first game in this Lego series. It's probably going to have some more lightsaber battles. Seems like it's going to have some space missions, but I bet that you see a lot less racing and space missions in the reboot than you did in the previous game. We may see less studs. You may see less grind. Things may just be cheaper. Particularly for the Lego Star Wars universe, there was actually a limit on how many studs you can get, whereas like Lego Batman 3, I got up to like 10 billion studs because of the score and stud multipliers. But there was like a 2 billion limit in the first game, and yeah, I could see trying to get back to that 2 billion limit and not having players just get ridiculously ever increasing numbers. Moving on, Jet the Far Shore launches October 5th for PC, PS4, and PS5. I guess I want to check this just to see if I recall which game this is. I don't think I've ever seen this game. Seems like it's a fairly all over the place game where you seem to fly around a lot. I'm gonna have to, I would definitely have to see I'd have to see some reviews on that and some more gameplay before I could determine whether that was something I would want to play. Okay, I could play this. I could play this. Probably just want to play this. Let's see. A Far Cry 6 story trailer is out there. There's been a lot of promotion of Far Cry 6, and it frankly is taking a little too long to come out, so I don't see a real reason to hype yourself up anymore. It's coming out October 7th. It'll probably be a better version compared to Far Cry 5. I imagine it's not going to get worse. Demo for the Switch version 1.9 update is now available, adding 18 songs. These music games, at this point, I really cannot talk about them. You can see some of the songs listed here, but they're all Japanese, like custom songs, so you're more than likely not going to recognize them. I do see that it's including the Citus 2 collection, Volume 1, which means it is including some of the musics in a different mobile music game, Citus.
The uncharted desert awaits.
CYTUS, or Citus 2 to be more accurate.
I just want to fill the emptiness.
Let's see. Death Smiles 1 and 2 for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch have English text support, new trailer, and a Gothic Wa Maho Otome character DLC announced. So, do we have anything here as far as the trailer to see that? Gothic Wa Maho sounds like probably a Gothic Lolita character. Death Smiles, apparently a side-scrolling shooter. I thought it was a fighting game. Some of the games that have really interesting titles tend to actually have very generic gameplay mechanics.
Best of luck to you.
Yep. So I assume, skipping around here, that this character here is Gothic Wa Maho. Because if I vaguely recall, Maho is what they use to describe younger girls or younger characters in general. Sometimes because there's that anime Maho Magical Girl, I think is the name of that anime. It's been a while. It's been a while. Me and anime in particular have had some.
Kiss me goodbye.
Is that a human? Is that a human?
I guess we'd say we have not spent a lot of time together, me and anime, lately. I have not been watching anime for many years, and I'm falling out of my knowledge base on it as I age more and more. Not that I wouldn't get back into it, it's just I'd never have any time. And there's just so much of it too. Insurgency Sandstorm for PS4 and Xbox One launches September 9th. I couldn't really care less about a military first-person shooter, so I'm gonna just skip that. Tales of Arise has a theme song trailer, Blue Moon by Ayaka, if you want to check that out. Gearbox Entertainment Company, which apparently is now the name of it. When did it change its title? Has established a Gearbox Studio Montreal, which is weird because I thought they already had one. Nope, they had a Studio Quebec in 2005. So, at best now, anything made by Gearbox in the future has a chance of not being developed by at most, like, there's a chance that only 1/3 or none of the game was actually made by the Gearbox in Denton, Texas, I believe. Nope, Frisco, Texas. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Texas, regardless. So yeah, Gearbox Texas seems like it is getting sidelined to use the name Gearbox, and this is kind of the problem with any company, is that you establish a new studio, you give it the name of the old studios, it devalues the name and the employees at the old studio. I really wouldn't be surprised if the Gearbox Texas gets shrunk down significantly or shut down in favor of using non-union. Actually, you have a higher chance of having to use union workers in Canada than you do Texas. But I wouldn't be surprised if the employees are fairly irate and disgruntled in Gearbox Texas, specifically for good reason. And Randy Pitchford is trying to shift the Gearbox name so it still has some name recognition while getting rid of the employees that he personally is probably screwed over. It is particularly ridiculous that Gearbox would establish a new studio, and you can only assume that this was in the works before the acquisition by Embracer Group. If this was done all after the acquisition, that seems very weird.
Be gone.
Ride the lightning, baby!
destruction.
What this does establish, though, is that they do point out that they are going to be working on Borderlands franchise. They're going to continue to make Borderlands things. It would be a very quick shift, certainly, if 3 different Gearbox studios all lose the rights to Borderlands, which is owned by 2K, and then they're all making completely different games, particularly since Gearbox has really failed to have any real success on publishing anything or developing anything and selling anything else besides Borderlands properties. They tried somewhat with Duke Nukem Forever, but that was never really going to succeed. But then they also tried with some online Overwatch clone, and I can't even tell you the name of it.
Mother, father, come on.
I'm sure they've made maybe something else, a couple other things. They tried to be a publisher themselves and didn't get anywhere with that. Moving on. Monster Rancher 1 and 2 DX have been announced for Switch, PC, and iOS due out December 9th in Japan. So, I assume these are re-releases of the old Monster Rancher games. The thing about Monster Rancher originally is you would put in music CDs or any kind of CDs, and it would make a random monster based on just a general hash of the CD that you put in. For a Switch, there's no CD. For most people with a PC, there's no CD-ROM in most computers these days, and very few people even have CDs. So you're trying to release something that was fairly popular, particularly in Japan, in a world that doesn't really support that. I assume these have DX on them because they were originally re-released on the Nintendo DX and probably already corrected for the no CD issue. It's gonna feel like a very old school clone of Pokemon, the Monster Rancher series, and I could severely assume that most Westerners would not have any interest in playing it, so it probably won't come into the Western market. Like, what we need, frankly, would before a re-release of Monster Rancher 1 and 2 or DX, what we would have needed would have been a new Monster Rancher, whether that's Monster Rancher 3 coming out on the 25th anniversary, or Monster Rancher 4 or 5 or whatever number they're up to, and it would basically have to feel like the Pokemon reboot or something similar, where it is just drastically different and way visually polished. Moving on, Bravely Default 2 is coming to PC on September 2nd. It's currently available on Switch. So, yeah. The Final Fantasy kind of spin-off series or game series made from the original creators of Final Fantasy.
No!
Yeah. Yeah. Square Enix definitely has a problem with too many Final Fantasy creators or people who made games that were labeled as Final Fantasy, and now Square Enix is on the back end of just labeling a ridiculous amount of fantasy games under the moniker of Final Fantasy, even though they really didn't connect in any way. You've created a system of name confusion where it's very difficult to know that maybe you play the Final Fantasy 13 series, maybe you play Final Fantasy 15, maybe you play Final Fantasy 7 or 8, but you probably don't play 1 through 6, and you probably don't play 9 or 10. And since there's no real connecting narrative, or no big connecting narrative, there is no desire or demand that you actually have to play all the Final Fantasy games. Moving on, Clyde the Snail for PS4 launches August 31st. This looks like this might be a first-person shooter. Interesting. Well, you want something different, creating a game that is a first-person shooter, and you're a snail. Well, it's a top-down twin-stick shooter, I guess. That's interesting. It's definitely different. It's a different idea that you have a fast-moving snail that is shooting things. I mean, yeah. I don't find snails particularly weird or creepy. I guess maybe some people would, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as somebody who has just a phobia of spiders or something like that. A game like that, though, is going to certainly have some question marks around would it have sold better when it comes out, or yeah, would it have sold better had it just been a regular human running around and shooting. But at least it has a unique name, and I'll probably remember it in a few months, where a generic first-person shooter I won't remember. A game, Gigabash has a Gamescom 2021 trailer, which Gigabash looks like one of these kaiju games. We're still trying to find a good version of a kaiju game. This looks like a 3D environmental destruction fighting game. Seems like it might be multiplayer focused, and you're kind of limited in an arena, so while you may be fighting each other, you might also be trying to destroy the items around here, or the buildings around the area. Doesn't look terrible. Let's see. The Legends of Heroes Kuro no Kisekai has a 3-minute trailer and 20 minutes of gameplay if you want to check that out from Gametsu. Blasphemous Wounds of Eventide update launches December 9th, and Blasphemous 2 has been announced. Which, yeah. At some point I probably will get around to playing Blasphemous. Although, if I recall, it was a fairly difficult looking game. So I could see playing it and then being very burned out on it and rage quitting it. And here you just get a teaser of a number 2 in 2023. So hit this, I guess.
I will rise.
Loopmancer has a gameplay overview trailer, which I think we've already kind of heard about Loopmancer. I think it is a side-scrolling kind of platforming game. Maybe not. Yeah. Time manipulation, side-scrolling, hack and slash game with what seems to be a decent amount of cutscenes. It looks like it's a Chinese developed or in development game, which, yeah, if you get that done well, that'll be great. There has been a long history, though, of seeing some really pretty cutscenes in Chinese games, and then the actual game being very annoyingly generic and boring. Here we have a game called The Craft of the Samurai. I think I already put this on the following list. I went back too far, didn't I? Dungeon Clicker. Is there anything here? No, I wouldn't play a clicker game. I think we had already said that. Hungry Dino. Doesn't look like anything of interest. It says it's a precision platformer according to the tag. I don't think so. Early access $2.99, English, Russian, Ukrainian. Medieval shop simulator. I have no interest in that. It's $12.99, English and Russian. We're still getting what feels like a high level of Russian troll games, for lack of a better description.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Yeah, random blacksmith game. Looks like nothing of interest. Early access, $4.99 English. Back of Space, which looks like nothing of interest. Early access, $9.99. Here we have one that's all in Chinese, and it looks like Japanese shogo, Japanese chess, which I'd love to learn how to play Japanese chess, but this is probably not even going to support English. Free to play, Japanese only. Here we have a game called Reshaping Mars. In all fairness, if I did try to learn to play Japanese chess, I wouldn't be surprised if it's extremely difficult to learn.
Fluttering in my face.
I'm not seeing anything in Reshaping Mars that looks interesting as a real-time strategy. Early access, $8.49, English and Chinese. Here we have a Chrono Jotter, a game called The Chrono Jotter, which looks like it is mostly a visual novel, maybe with some word puzzles. Might be Chinese, might be Korean, might just be a little too simplistic. 10.19, Chinese only. Here we have a game called Mononoke Slashdown, which looks like a hack and slash fighting game. Maybe a little too zoomed in, and there seems to be some weird mechanics here for what looks like a beat 'em up game. $7.99, English, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. I'll put that on the follow list. We'll see. Okay. Kill that first.
What's this?
Put this on the field. Put this on the field. Evolve this.
You were done for.
Kill that.
I will protect even in death. Thus the world.
Hit that, I guess. Then we'll end the turn. Let's see. Gamatsu has a 2D action game, adventure game called There Is No Light, launching in November for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Let's see what that looks like, because this is the first time I've heard about this. What I'm hoping is this isn't a game that spends the vast majority of its time in darkness, because that would kind of suck.
You are mine forever.
There's just so many of these fast-paced hack and slash top-down games or top-down twin-stick shooters, which they're starting to blend in my mind as the same genre when they kind of aren't the same genre. Like, this looks good, but I do kind of have this fatigue in the back of my mind just saying, yeah, this... I'm not certain if it's really something I want to be hyped about.
I shall give birth to a new world.
What's this?
I'm dying. Let's see, a roguelike turn-based exploration game, Sandwalkers, has been announced for Switch and PC. You know what? We're not really seeing any announcements anymore for Switch exclusives. And some of that is definitely going to fall directly onto the shoulders of Nintendo. That even they don't really have any first party title games. Now is kind of a great time to buy a Nintendo Switch, I imagine, for a kid, because you could buy all the old games, maybe used and on a slight discount, without any big hype towards anything, at least until the latest Pokemon game, I think, is the next big thing that people would be hyped on as far as kids. Or the re-release of the Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, I think, is the next big thing. And I think that comes out in November. Whereas, go back a couple years when the Switch first came out, and you had some fairly rapid releases of first party title games. Let's see. Gamatsu says Marsupilami Hob Adventure Gamescom trailer. That is a ridiculous name. I feel like I've seen this character before. I don't know if this is the first game for this character and I've just seen it before or what. So you have this monkey, for lack of a better term, that has a super long tail that maybe lets him roll kind of like Sonic. In a lot of ways, I guess this is a Sonic clone, which, in all fairness, a Sonic clone is not a terrible thought. And what this lets me highlight more than anything is I've seen thousands of platforming games out there that that barely have anything. There's no enemies, there's barely any collectibles, there's no boss fights, there's no generic there's no just any concept at all. And that's not what I see here. I see an actual game. And so that does kind of establish in my mind, at least, what the bar of quality is as far as platformers. So yeah, when that comes out, I'll definitely put that on the fall list. A game called Brine Punk, which is a roguelike first-person shooter. No, a Brine Punk roguelike first-person shooter called Abyssus, or maybe you pronounce that Abscess, has been announced for PC. Brine Punk is a unique phrase I've never heard of. I assume what this is a half steampunk, half under the water concept. Something close to, I guess, a Bioshock type experience. Seems like you're firing arrows. And then you seem to have to get every shot off fairly quickly. Yeah. It's an underwater environment. Not very much like Bioshock, because in all fairness, a lot of what Bioshock was just happening in the 1960s environments that happened to be underwater as a side note. But this Abyssus does look interesting. Okay, so I'm going to toss this one, and then I'm going to toss the expensive one and draw 2 cards. Let's see, Kimetsu has a 2D isometric strategy RPG called Arcadian Atlas for launching in 2022 for PC. And from that thumbnail alone, it probably is not going to be something that immediately grabs my attention. this art style, even done really well, I just don't feel like is ever going to really catch most players' attention. This feels a lot like the strategy placement RPG game I tried to play and failed miserably at because it's just so grindy and long to play that style. I should probably learn that lesson and think about if I was ever going to play XCOM or something like that, whether a game like that actually would keep my attention or whether I'd just get bored. Let's see, we have a game on Steam here called VR Rescue of Girls, which looks like it's an asset flip horror game, for lack of a better term. A lot of dark screenshot syndrome. I feel like you may be closer to kidnapping girls than actually rescuing them. It seems like you just walk over them because nothing has been programmed correctly. Best case scenario, this is $1.79. Allegedly, a bunch of languages supported. Best case scenario, I imagine the gameplay mechanic is you stay away from the creepy girls and you touch the non-creepy girls.
Forget it. I'm done.
See, I guess we play that.
The first move.
Obviously, that's not making it to the follow list. Next, we have VR Pirates of the Caribbean Life Experience, which there might be something here, but I'm not really seeing it. The concept of in VR having a pirate experience and kind of an educational experience might make sense, but it's way too cheap at $2.99 to feel like that would possibly be quality. So I'm just gonna say no to this. The screenshots are not showing me anything of interest either. And I did not prepare well enough, and I don't have enough water for as much talking as I was going to do today. So now I'm to my emergency backup water, which is tasting pretty stale. Let's see.
Farewell.
Guess we can pull that off. Here we have a game called Cube-E2 is the name of it. I've never seen a Cube-E1, but it looks at the game, it doesn't seem like it's anything other than, it says it's an arena shooter. $5.99 English and Russian. Part of a bundle of 52 items for $80.58. There definitely feels like there's some money laundering going on.
What you need is a nice roaring flame.
Okay. Next we have a game called Spookware, which seems to be just a collection of mini games of no interest. Next we have a game called Witchstone, which just looks like a match 3 game. You know what? I just closed that tab without looking at the price or looking at the language. This one's $5.99 English and Russian. And boy did that seem faster doing it that way. But I want to try to be consistently informative, and obviously I have to look at the price and the language support on games. But yeah, it sure would be nice if I could avoid doing that. Let's go ahead and hit this.
Fresh manna melons and potion fruit.
And then hit
Do
this.
not seek what is not there. Scatter like the blossom.
Hunger is sharper than any freshness
Hit that.
guaranteed.
There.
Look at all this kindling.
Next we have a game on Steam called the 10th Corpse, which looks like just a match 3 game.
Vanguard.
Weird name for a match 3 game. $5.39 English only. Here we have a game called Anne, which they're saying is a JRPG, which I would have just assumed it was a visual novel.
A fitting end.
Doesn't look like there's enough polish here. Now this art style is not terrible. This one image is fine. This image is mediocre, but not terrible. When you start getting into these zoomed out pixely images, they kind of don't matter. This is a great single image. This once again feels like one of those games where you have an artist that's probably pretty good, and he's selling his digital art book for $4.99, and then he's giving the game away for free, English and Japanese. I can't blame somebody desperate to promote themselves, particularly in Japan. It's probably pretty hard to get your name out there. It's not probably that hard to get work as an animation artist, but getting recognition on the other hand is probably extremely difficult.
No scrubbing needed. Just vanish is hard to reach demons. Just finish the job.
Like the moon on the water.
Darn it. Once again, I found a way to lose. At this point, I think we give up on the idea of even doing the daily quest. We just try to take victories. It's been both Wednesday and Friday. It's been basically no victories at all. It's getting very frustrating. The win ratio has never been great on Shadowverse, but this is getting ridiculous.
Fighting in despair, all you
And
know?
I will suspect the reason why we're not winning is because the better players are actually playing, whereas when they're not giving away awards, the better players maybe don't play as much. Let's see. A game called The Waylanders launches November 16th according to Gamatsu. Let's see. Do they have a trailer? Yeah, let's check that out. See tower. See some areas. Feels kind of Skyrim-esque, for lack of a better description. Not really seeing a gameplay mechanic so much. Yeah, it kind of feels like it would just be fantasy RPG stuff. Some kind of magical bracelet apparently is going to be a big focus. That's not a very good trailer in my opinion. A doesn't really hype me up for the game, and B doesn't really inform me what kind of game it's going to be. It just shows me what it's going to look like, and what it looked like didn't look that good. A tactical turn-based roguelike deck builder called Oaken has been announced for Switch and PC, which, like, I always want to give deck builders a chance. I'm not sure if there's a game here that, yeah, it's a tactical roguelike. It's not a deck builder. I don't know why they described it that way. This feels like one of those games where I might be able to play it for a brief time through the single player campaign, but I definitely wouldn't want to play any kind of online multiplayer if such a thing ever comes out as a feature. Let's see, a sandbox island life game called Trading Time has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. I assume a lot of these announcements did come out during Gamescom. Really, it doesn't feel like there was too much as far as announcements on Gamescom, but I don't know if I was really even expecting that much to happen. This might be good, this might be bad. There's a decent chance it's just kind of mediocre. Assetto Corsa Competizione is coming to PS5 and Xbox Series on February 24th, 2022. So a free upgrade from the PS4 and Xbox One versions. So I don't even know how many people would be playing this racing game, but whoever is probably appreciative of a free upgrade. A game called Tales of Iron has a trailer on Gamescom. Of course, a lot of these trailers not really showing anything. Here we have a game on Steam called Rue, R-U-E, which looks like a card game, but it seems like every character is the exact same character. Like you're sitting around the table playing poker or something, and there is an idea certainly around more than two people playing a card game. I know you can do that in some of the formats of Magic the Gathering, but if you could potentially play Shadowverse or Hearthstone and have a 3v3 or 3-on-3 type experience where 3 people are fighting at the same time, that would probably be more random. Plus, if you created a system like that where its first loss to win, you immediately turn a game that has to be balanced to a 50% win ratio into a 66.6% win ratio. If you play 4 people, and then 3 people win when the first person loses, so it's just a gang up style. Let's find the weakest player and play. That would be interesting too. And it probably would suck in the implementation if you're not very careful about how you would implement something like that, but I definitely could see the idea around specifically having 3 or 4 players win as soon as the lowest player is out, or 3 or 4 players win after 10 turns. Maybe you limit the number of turns in a collectible card game. Maybe that would work in an interesting way. Of course, I'm no expert on developing collectible card games, so I can only tell you my experiences and what I'd like to see. As far as this game Rue, though, it just visually isn't polished enough. It's free, it's single player, it's English only, and it's an early access. So maybe at some point it would be good, but that'd probably be years from now. Here we have a game called Mainly at Rest, which just looks like an asset flip getting over it with Benet Foddy clone. $4.99, bunch of languages, allegedly full English audio. Maybe it's not even really a climbing game. Here we have Mark Out the Wrestling card game, which, even if you don't have the licenses to actual wrestlers, making them gray blobs is not a good move. And if this is supposed to be a card game, there is not a single screenshot here of what the cards look like. So while this might look fairly nice in card format with the gray blobs, which I still don't really agree with, it looks awful in its actual animation. $16.99 with no in-app purchases, English only, allegedly full audio, early access. I think you're starting way too early on a concept like that.
You were done for.
Come on.
Legs into each back straight line forward.
Didn't move fast enough there. Here we have a game called Battlegrounds War Tanks and Nukes, which looks like a tower defense game of no quality. $4.99, bunch of languages. Here we have a prologue, so we don't really need to talk about it. Epiphany City. It looks kind of interesting. So there might be something to this puzzle exploration game when it actually comes out. But we'll ignore prologues for now. Here we have a game called Bum Simulator, which, yeah, oddly more visual polish on this than you would tend to expect to see, because it would be fairly easy to not have any real polish on it and just try and asset flip something. Let's heal this, and then I guess heal this. And then I guess you hit this. Bum Simulator is rated very positively. $16.99 English, allegedly full audio. It's also bundled with Drug Dealer Simulator. Which, yeah. I don't think I'd want to play a game like this. This feels a little too just ridiculous or a little too mean-spirited. This is the kind of thing that might be an interesting experience. If you are doing a sequence of like this in Duke Nukem or even GTA. But yeah, I kind of don't think you want a full experience there. Here we have a game called The Winding Path. Looks like it might be an interesting hand-drawn experience. $7.19 might be too expensive though. English only. I'll put it on the follow list. This might be one of those games that actually is good, but then has no relevance ever, so never gets reviewed or covered by anybody, including me. Just because there's going to be a limited number of people willing to even give it a chance.
Punish the wicked, spare the innocent.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
Let's see, what do we want to preserve? It's either this one or this one, so let's preserve this one.
Keeps the doctor away.
Thus the world.
Hit that one. Kill that one.
I did my bestest.
You're in good hands. Harder, faster, holier.
And in return, Let's see. Gungrave Gore launches in 2022 for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Has a new cinematic trailer. Now, I'm fairly certain there is a anime called Gungrave, so I have to assume that this is connected to that, but maybe it isn't.
I'll discipline you down to your soul.
This is a trailer with a lot of build-up.
I'll show you.
Yeah.
Sorry, but the time for games is over.
So yeah, looks very gory, very
Today's sermon.
crazy. And this was part of the Future Games Show, which is, I guess, another event that happened very recently. Moving on, Gametsu says the Nintendo All-Star Brawl has added a playable cat dog and April O'Neil PC version. I don't know which Nickelodeon show would have had an April O'Neil that looked like this, though. And even Cat Dog really didn't look like that. They're definitely trying very hard to make April O'Neil a thing by adding her to not one but two different Ninja Turtles games announcements.
Thus, the world ends.
And I guess that's fine. I mean, I really can't imagine there's a legitimate complaint to make there. For a while there, they were trying to do an African American April O'Neil, and for a while there they were trying to have a female Ninja Turtle way back in the day, and that failed fairly miserably. So I think they do better with an April O'Neil than they do. Finally. Wow.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
Like, I think they do better with April O'Neil being the main female attraction than trying to have female turtles. Because that's what's recognizable from the movies. And I think the Ninja Turtles in particular are a series that are only getting promoted and pushed based on the nostalgia of parents who saw and played with Ninja Turtles when they were kids. So, yeah. You're gonna run into a problem in the next few years where April O'Neil being a news reporter is not going to make a lot of sense.
Father, come on.
Considering how there's very few news reporters that even exist now. And very few of them are on the beat. And none of them are in bright yellow jumpsuits. Well, it will be still weird, but at some point I might very well play Nintendo All-Star Brawl just because Smash Brothers is not on PC. And of course, Nintendo could solve that by just saying, hey, we're going to do a one-time experiment here and put Smash Brothers on PC.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
Let's see. Next, Gametsu says the last Ori Crew story trailer is out. I don't know what an Ori Crew would be. Sounds like a Ori Crew. I know, like, the Stargate TV series had an enemy called the Ori. But this doesn't seem like this is really too connected to that. Or even influenced by that. Kind of feels like it's a beyond human clone set in kind of a techno medieval world. Well, there could be something here, but this could also be very little to nothing. Which I guess is true for any game. So it could be garbage or it could be good. On Steam we have Access Football 2021, which looks to be a simulation strategy game. It looks better than most in that it actually does seem to actually show the gameplay to a certain level. To $29.99 English only. I'd be very interesting to see how many people actually care about the simulation of their teams and strategy gameplay mechanics in a football game versus how many people just want to play an arcade style fast twitch football, professional football simulator. Here we have a game called Have a Blast, which looks like a top-down player versus player space shooter game. $14.99, says it's single player, but it seems like it's fairly focused on multiplayer. Here we have a game called Little Dog Bob, which looks like a generic platformer, although I don't hate the animation and still of Bob in movement. This looks like it's going to be pretty rough, and the actual game does not seem like it's much of anything. So we'll hit this.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
In the turn. Here we have a game called Farm Kitten Puzzle Pipes, which, I guess you're puzzling out the irrigation system under a thing. There's a misnomer here that pipes would ever be
Today's sermon.
this downward, down in the ground. Like you're gonna put them at most a few feet, probably a few inches in the ground. You're not going to try and put pipes super deep unless you're doing geothermal, and even then you're going to have one pipe going super deep, or if you're doing well water you're going to have one pipe going deep. At a certain point I feel like you're adding a concept here that doesn't really work that well on top of something that might work well. I guess if you get the visions and can change the angles at which you look at things, it might be playable. But yeah, having this top layer cover your vision seems kind of ridiculous. This is $1.19 English, Portuguese, Chinese, and Japanese. I'm going to put this on the follow list. I'm kind of constantly looking for a good pipe game and kind of constantly not finding it.
Of course I do.
Let's see. Next game is tag sexual content, so let me double check that it's YouTube family friendly. Which, yeah, I guess technically YouTube hasn't said anything about hot tub things. So we have a game here called Hot Tub Simulator, which is just some pretty ugly looking 3D cartoon girls in different tubs, none of which actually I think are a hot tub. I guess this is a hot tub. Maybe this is a hot tub. But this is a pool. And this is a bathtub. And this is a pool. This is $1.99 for this game, English only. It kind of highlights how far behind some of these troll game developers are that they're putting out something like this at this point. When the whole hot tub streams on Twitch were super popular nearly a year ago. And that was never going to translate over to a video game concept. I sure hope there isn't a future in which a generation of kids have a fetish for Twitch streamers in hot tubs, and that's the thing that they're looking for on Pornhub tags or something like that, where there's just like a whole hot tub category. Because that would be pretty pathetic if that does happen.
You were done for.
Punish the wicked. Let judgment fall.
Wait, what's this?
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
Next we have a game called Base Defense VR, which looks like nothing. It's free for VR. That's incredibly too cheap. English only. It says it has turrets, so it kind of feels like it's a tower defense game in VR. Which, yeah, I don't think that would work in VR. I don't know why you'd even bother to try and make a tower defense game in general, let alone one in VR. Next we have a game called Watch Your Ride, bicycle game, which is already mixed. So this doesn't look terrible. Must just play terrible. I'm not sure that there's a competitor to this too, because it's kind of like a 3D version of Excite Bike or some of the other challenge type experiences. It seems like it's focused on online. It's $7.19 online co-op. I'm gonna cut this one some slack. Wow, Chrome may have crashed. There, if Chrome just crashed, I can't cover the news. I'd have to reload it. That would be an awkward turn of events. Certainly if Chrome crashes.
Look to the zenith. For there I will rise.
Chrome is also kind of rock solid though, so yeah. That specific tab crashed, but none of the other tabs crashed. So thank goodness for that. I think I have a setting turned on to run each process in its own separate process just for that reason. Here we have a game on Steam called T-30. It probably didn't really crash. It probably just did a lockup with a smooth scrolling. This is $8.99 English only. Seems like it's a city builder game. Doesn't look that interesting. Here we have a game called Assimilate, a party game, which looks like it's a big group game that I could never actually play. $9.99 online PvP only. Seems like it's a werewolf clone where you're trying to figure out who's the robot. The concept of playing a party game where everybody's supposed to get on board and say the same answers is not a concept that would interest me. That would be a boring experience.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
Okay.
The real battle begins.
Let's take out these guys.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
If I ended up with a whole bunch of these 0-2s on the field, they'd probably have a hard time doing any damage to me. Let's see. Gamatsu says Crown Trick for PS4 and Xbox One has been delayed to September 7th. It's no longer coming out August 31st.
Not with everyone around me.
I recognize Crown Trick. There's a couple of games that look somewhat similar to this, so I might be thinking of a different one. But this is a nice, easy article that doesn't require any other investigation. Imp of the Sun launches in early 2022.
Not with everyone around me.
Which,
The world cycles on.
see what kind of game this is. a platforming hack and slash beat 'em up game. Maybe a Metroidvania.
No! No! Stop!
2D action platformer, it says.
Does this outfit make me look too
Okay, well, it looks interesting enough. At least to pique my interest. And go.
There's no other way.
Ladies and
There's
gentlemen,
no retreat.
follow me. You're in good hands. You're mean.
Gematsu has Dolmen gameplay trailer, a cosmic horror sci-fi third-person action RPG. Let's see.
Stop!
Check out what this looks like. I could be clicking on the Steam pages to look at these games, but that just takes more time. Okay, yeah. Big monster, guy in power suit, fighting a bunch of people in a weird kind of Dark Souls feeling sci-fi concept, which that's not a terrible thought because we really haven't seen any Dark Souls ripoffs that are specifically around. Oh, I should have hit this
I
one,
love this job.
but
Of course I
whatever.
do.
Yeah, I really haven't seen anything specifically around the concept of
This is where I truly shine. Ow!
let's see. Play this, play this. And I guess in the turn. Yep. A space themed Dark Souls game does make sense. And yeah, finally when we just start focusing on winning, all of a sudden we start to win. Which I think that is probably all we can really hope for. You know, is just trying to get victories over and over again. We're 2 hours and 30 minutes into this. I'm just going to try and burn through the news and then call it today. I can also leave some games for Monday. I had forgotten about that, so we very possibly have less tabs to go through than I thought I did.
Is fighting and despair all
Let's
you
see.
know? Time
A
to
game
get
called
started.
Moon is coming to the PC. Release date not announced. Moon first launched in 1997 in Japan, followed by the Switch in October of 2019, and later in August of 2020 in the West. So this must be some form of niche fandom style game that's popular enough in Japan to succeed enough to get a Western release. Gematsu has the Famitsu sales updated for this week. Let's see if there's anything worth mentioning. Ghost of Tsushima for the PS5 Director's Cut is new in the 5th space, and for PS4 is in the 7th space. Is there any other PlayStation in the top 10? No. In the top 20? No. In the top 30? No. So, yeah. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, the only thing that's pushing the PlayStation at all in Japan. Hardware-wise, we're still getting massive amounts of sales of the Switch. PlayStation is far behind even the Switch Lite, but the Xbox Series X in particular is way higher at nearly 3,000, beating the PlayStation 5 Digital Edition and the PlayStation 4, and well, nobody really is buying the Nintendo 2DS LL So it's going to come down to perhaps availability affecting sales, but if it will definitely be a big story if one week here, we have an Xbox Series X outselling the PlayStation 5 in total for even 1 week. That would get very overhyped and very talked about. Moving on, Gametsu says Muv-Luv Project Mikhail has been delayed to October and has a new trailer. Muv-Luv being a mech fighting game, I believe. Kind of a weird looking mech fighting game. I think there's also some anime girls that show up in visual novel elements in Muv-Luv, but maybe not. Maybe it's just a weird named game. Let's see. Escaluda 2 for Switch has a teaser trailer. This looks like a shoot 'em up game. So yeah, that's not likely to interest me. It's got some side art that is kind of attractive, but not even particularly good. Yep. Feels like it is yet another one of these games that has yet to find a way to do something more with its with the fact that games are widescreen. I did see a gaming monitor that was just announced. It's really expensive, but instead of having an ultra wide screen like 23 by 1 or whatever the ultra widescreen cinematic formats you might have for watching something like Gone with the Wind or something. Instead of just having a really wide curved monitor that you normally would have, it gives you a 16 by 9 ratio monitor, but because it's an OLED, it can just turn off the pixels completely in the top and bottom section to turn it into a more widescreen experience. So you just have black screen at the top and bottom instead of perhaps a backlit black pixel, which is way more recognizable and irritating in most scenarios. Personally, I just don't think there's enough of an audience to justify ultra widescreen curved gaming monitors at all. I don't think the game development is there. I don't think the video cards can really push that many pixels. I think you're way better off going cheap and getting a smart TV that you can then use to watch Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever. Not just a Roku TCL style smart TV is my recommendation. And then plugging your monitor in that. That being said, I'm also only pushing my game to 1080p 60 anyways because I can't really record at anything higher than that. My eyes are probably not good enough to tell the difference considering my TV is 10 feet away, or my two TVs are 10 feet away with a third TV to the left of me that's much smaller and much closer. So yeah, when you have that distance, I think you don't need that higher resolution. I would definitely change my tune if I had a monitor directly in front of me, but I'm not looking to put a monitor directly in front of me. Because then I would end up needing a TV and a monitor. Let's see. We have a Gametsu article. They sold that with twin arms. Bitsimit, the 8-bit trailer. That is a lot of words. Let's see. The name of the game. It's a side-scrolling action game called They Sold That with Twin Arms. Which, yeah. As much as we might say localization is sometimes done poorly or actively trying to censor things, when you have a game like this that obviously means a lot more in its native Japanese. A localization to make the phrase make more sense would make sense. Like, if you said this was the robot with twin arms, that would make sense. The girl with two twin arms or two arms, that would make more sense. Let's see. Yuri Kill the Culmination Games is still putting out trailers. As a shoot 'em up game, it really seems like it wants to highlight what is a very large number of characters in its visual novel elements. To the point where I kind of have to wonder if maybe there is a level here where the game itself is so focused around the interactions that the gameplay mechanic of just being a shoot 'em up game may not matter as much. Like, if these are just kind of generic levels that take 5 or 10 minutes and there's one for each character, and then you're spending 20 minutes on the conversations, that does then create a scenario where I should probably reevaluate the game and reconsider whether I'm interested in it or not. That being said, you're still creating a scenario here that's irritating because they're getting away with overhyping and over advertising the game. They put out like 5 trailers at this point. Moving on, the Smurfs Mission Villef gameplay trailer is now available from Gamatsu, which I think we had already talked about this game, or we already knew about this game. It does look like it might be a pretty good kid-friendly platformer. I don't know how many kids care about the Smurfs, really, but we'll see. Even trying not to use my voice, I've really overused my voice, and I've also not really scheduled as many videos that, like, I needed to have taken this whole week to schedule more videos, and I didn't do it.
I will not back down.
Like, time is quickly running out for scheduling the Halloween month footage, and after I get the Halloween month footage scheduled, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that needs to be scheduled.
You are done for. I'll show no mercy.
I will try to make it, try and double down and make an effort to get that done over the weekend. Now, I am noticing something here about Shadowverse in that we seemingly very quickly are getting the gold treasure chest again. And either that means we played 5 games and lost, and that's all we needed to do to unlock the next gold treasure chest, or the gold treasure chests kind of just happen when you're behind if you don't play enough. Or sometimes they just kind of happen randomly. You still really can only get them if you win, which is unfortunately the big if. Gamatsu has Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater, 50 minutes of PS4 gameplay. That is a lot of gameplay, certainly. And this is all in the middle of one of those presentations. And see, this is what I was talking about on Wednesday, is you can very easily just have the presenters on a green screen doing their presentation. They don't need to be on the table. They don't need to be next to other people. They've given this presenter a button that will change the video to a cat whenever there's a spooky thing on the game. Interesting. And she's gonna play that up. Here you have them actually taking photos. So the camera obscura is still a part of the Fatal Frame series. It would kind of make no sense for it not to be. But a lot of this game does seem to also kind of work around just walking around. And avoiding spooky enemies. In a lot of ways, I think the Fatal Frame series probably suffers from the fact that you have to use this magic camera to take pictures of the monsters to destroy them. Whereas it would be better for it to be a smoother experience, probably without the camera stuff. And mostly I think the Fatal Frame series still kind of has to center around the story, and I have no idea to what level of quality the story has been evolved to. I will say, if we come back over here, at some point here you have another guy and he's wearing a mask, but he seems like he's way more zoomed in. Either that or he would be about 2 times as big as her. So yeah, if you look at just like the size of his head and the size of her head, he is zoomed in a lot more, and they've just green screened the images together, and he's still wearing a mask even at that point, which I think you want to at least start with that. I know there's a lot of flashy shenanigans that happen where characters, people on TV are wearing masks that they just put on right before the camera started to then immediately take them off to talk to the microphone or talk to the camera. But even that is appreciated by me. Like, even if you're just kind of pretending like you're wearing the mask, you're still propagating the idea of wearing the masks to other people and reminding people. You would think and that the culture of wearing masks in Asian countries like Japan would have made it a lot easier for them to deal with COVID, but I feel like there probably was a lot more people that secretly weren't wearing masks and never wore masks in Japan than even the Japanese thought, because it would have been really easy to have half your population never wear a mask and then have your population sometimes wear a mask when they're sick and make it feel like people, the whole population was wearing a mask when they were sick. And once people actually needed to or were told to, that seemed to, particularly in the United States, inspire a strong will to not follow instructions and just be obstinate. And I wouldn't be surprised if you have some of that in other countries also. Moving on, since that has nothing to do with video games though. Stubbs the Zombie in Rebel Without a Pulse Physical Edition has been announced. So, is Stubbs the Zombie Rebel Without a Pulse a new game or an old game? Because it looks to me like an old game, and I know there was a Stubbs the Zombie game in general, but I don't know if this is it or if there was multiple Stubbs the Zombie games and I just thought there was only one. So anyway, we can heal. Yeah, we can do this. And we can do this. And then we can evolve next turn.
Back straight, eyes forward.
Here we have a game on Steam, Black Geyser, Couriers of Darkness, which just looks like a Diablo clone. I don't think I can immediately dismiss it just because it's a Diablo clone though. It's early access, $22.49. That's fairly expensive, English only. I'll give it a follow. Here we have another prologue, Swarm the City prologue, which kind of has a feel that feels somewhat like Day of the Tentacle as far as the animation style, but the actual game seems to be mostly a game where you're controlling zombies to swarm a city. Not a terrible thought, so when the actual game comes out I might check it out. It's English and Chinese, the prologue is. Here we have a game called Marfusha, which, I don't know if there's a game here or not. It kind of feels like a tower defense game where you're standing and then you have these anime girls shooting guns. High tempo shooting game with the simple controls. Upgrade your character with cards and defend the gates from your enemies. $7.19, English, Chinese, and Japanese. It's rated very positively. I'm going to put this on the follow list just to think about it a little bit more, but like this might be the level at which you could make something like a Plants vs. Zombies style tower defense experience and it would stand out enough to actually feel like a game instead of just feeling like a generic experience or just a low effort game. Here we have a game called Stories of Mara, which looks like it's a visual novel with a level of polish visually on it. It's rated positively. It's free. It's, I guess, the prequel to Summer in Mara. English, Spain, Spanish. So here's the point I have to say anytime I talk about the game Summer in Mara. Way better title to call it Stories of Mara than Summer in Mara, because it really just, to me, whenever I hear that, sounds like you spent a summer sleeping with someone named Mara, and then you look at this game Mara and realize Mara is just a little girl, like, and there's like nothing wrong with this game. People actually like it quite a bit. I didn't know it was already out. This somehow skipped my attention. Maybe because it's a farming simulation game and I wasn't willing to play a farming simulation game, but I think I need to reconsider that. So yeah, if they renamed it Summer of Mara, which would be like, this is my summer, or the summer, her best summer, that would make sense. And I guess this prequel, I will, in the same vein, put on the fall list. Let's see, Sega Atlas Channel livestream is set for the Tokyo Game Show 2021 online. So that's October 1st through October 3rd. Well, that's going to happen. Gamma Sutra has an article from the editor, Reflections on Gamma Sutra, since it changed its name. I don't really see a reason for them to be nostalgic on the fact that they're just rebranding their website. He's picked 3 games here to talk about. One is an article after the Christchurch mass shooting, which honestly I don't think any mass shooting ever has had any realistic connection to video games at all, and that's just a narrative that mainstream news people, not even mainstream video game journalists, just mainstream news in general, tries to make every single mass spree shooter or mass killer look like they're some kind of crazed video game obsessed player. And then the third article here they're suggesting is a GDC summer talk promoting their own company. The only thing I guess I could say is if we look here, we'll turn off uBlock Origin on Gamma Sutra and we'll show what it looks like. And they've changed the logo already to game developer, and I'll talk about the logo in a second. But you can see this looks pretty bad at my zoom in. It's full of a lot of click here to see more things. Lots of text. I of course could bring down the zoom to 100%, and then apparently Informa has changed its name to Informa Tech also, and that still doesn't really show a particularly good design. And yeah, I don't think there's anything else that I've even manipulated as far as how the page looks. Whereas if we go over to this page, which is gamedeveloper.com, where that was Gamma Sutra, you have a white background, pretty much the exact same gray border. You have more of a nav bar at the top. It's still pretty much the same articles though, a lot of social media links. They are seemingly going to put more information now in the top bar. At least they are talking about this in this case when they're doing a post-mortem for Loop Hero, which it might be interesting to read an article for a post-mortem to Loop Hero, in the sense that that game was hyped and then a darling for the mainstream video game journalists, but then it kind of died a couple weeks after it came out because I don't think there was a large push for people to play it. Like, I don't follow a lot of YouTubers that play video games, but I'm not seeing people that are like PewDiePie all of a sudden playing Loop Hero or anything like that. And then you still are pretty much getting the exact same layout. They've just reskinned the game, the website. And then we have to cover the elephant in the room, I think, as far as the logo. Which, let's see. We can talk about that here. This logo looks like the wheelchair symbol. Which, if that was the plan, that every time anybody goes to gamedeveloper.com, it invokes the feeling that they are parking in a wheelchair in a handicapped parking space, then they have succeeded greatly. But if they're trying to have a good logo, I'd say they've done a terrible job. Because, first of all, I can kind of make a G out here, but then you have to really stretch to see the lowercase d in this. And, and while this might feel like it's kind of a Pac-Man eye, yeah, kind of would have needed to rotate it about 45 degrees. Yeah, if this had been rotated, then you could kind of say, oh, that's a Pac-Man symbol. But I would have definitely thought more they would have had a very easy to recognize G and an easy to recognize D. You're not having the .com, that's kind of fine. There's feels incredibly bland in that it is just white text in a generic font. There seems to be no mascot, there seems to be no design. It doesn't really feel like they have done anything than maybe implement a visual refresh for the sake of implementing a visual refresh. Gamasutra, which this will probably be the last Gamasutra article we ever talk about, also has a job listing for Volition as a senior environment artist, if you want to check that out. And then we move over to gamedeveloper.com. And yeah. So the NES, Super NES hardware designer Lance Barr has departed Nintendo after almost 40 years. So he would have made the NES and Super NES that were released in the West. He wouldn't have made things like the Famicom or Super Famicom, which pretty much I think means he made the plastic on the outside and that visuals, which the NES is a box, and the Super NES in its different releases get a little bit more polished, but they're not crazy polished as far as design. I would say there's almost certainly way more polish and design in a PlayStation 5, which is an awful design in my opinion, than there ever was in any of the NES or Super NES hardware designs. And I think by the time you were up to the Nintendo 64, all of that was probably being designed by the Japanese side of Nintendo again, and they were staying consistent amongst the different regions as far as how the hardware looked. The internals were, for the Famicom and the NES, were probably very close to exactly the same. We know the GameCube was almost certainly designed by Nintendo Japan and designed for a mentality of Japanese players potentially carrying their console like a lunchbox to their friend's house. So yeah, while it may feel like that's a big retirement, and it probably is for Nintendo of America, it more, in my mind, just highlights how most of the employees and most of the accomplishments of Nintendo of America are very, very puerile and simplistic accomplishments, because Nintendo of Japan has had a tight rein on all actual creativity coming out of their company.
Let's speed things up.
We already talked about this. Gearbox is opening a Montreal studio to work on Borderlands and new features. I will off-screen edit out all of this stuff to clean the gamedeveloper.com pages. There is an article here. Steam refund abuse has Summer of 58 developer Imca Games considering a hiatus. I don't like the idea of pushing a narrative that there is such a thing that even exists called Steam refund abuse. So often it feels like people push out these narratives and it is just whole cloth made up ideas. Like, sure, I'm sure there are some people out there that try to abuse the Steam no questions asked refund policies, but Valve, being invested in making money themselves, has, I think, enough mechanisms in place to prevent that from happening. The vast majority of game developers have said absolutely nothing about Steam's 2 hours, no question asked refund policy. The people who have complained about it have gone to the Epic Games Store and probably will be paid directly by Epic to promote the concept of the refund policy sucking. And it only sucks for developers who are not making a quality product. Nobody is out there. No, I won't say nobody, but there's no significant number of players out there that are so broke that they're trying to play video games in less than 2 hours to get a free refund to play a different game. Or they're trying to seek out games that take less than 2 hours to beat. If a developer can't make 2 hours of entertainment, or make a game so entertaining that people wouldn't bother to go through the refund system and movement, then that really is on the developer. And what I feel like an article like this being promoted by a game developer, which game developer does love to promote some garbage. Like, I feel like the game developer has a responsibility, as any journalism site has a responsibility, to research what they're printing and not just parrot and echo what somebody is saying. This game has a very positive rating on Steam, it says. So, yeah, very positive rating, $2.95. It's on my follow list. One look at this, it looks like it is a horror game. Probably an asset flip horror game. It doesn't look particularly that unique or good, but it does look good enough that it deserves a chance. That being said, if this developer just wants to complain, I don't have any real desire to play his game and then have to address the fact that the developer is complaining. Like, the other game he released is very positive. The other game he released is very positive. This person has no reason to complain at all and claim that a huge number is the actual quote of people have refunded. And the problem also comes down to the phrase abuse, because for there to be abuse, a single individual player would have to be getting multiple 2-hour no question asked refunds, which Steam doesn't let you do that as far as I understand it. You get like 1 no questions asked, maybe 2, maybe 3 a month, and after that point you are you are in a different system in which questions start to get asked. Steam is not going to let you buy 100 games and refund 100 games every month. Like, you would get flagged in their system for sure. And I think this probably is a case, and he doesn't want to probably even consider it or admit it. This is probably a case where this is a decent horror game when it runs, but it doesn't run on a lot of people's systems. I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a hardware setup where it just crashes at the very beginning, and then people get refunds because they can't get it running. And at that point, you are nowhere close to a refund abuse situation. We already talked about this. McCree having his name changed after the namesake was fired from Blizzard. They say he was fired. The Video Games Chronicle said he left. Yeah, the connection they're saying is he was in a infamous Cosby Suite picture, which had a lot of people in this hotel room with a picture of Cosby trying to do a dumb joke. But yeah, they're still not really getting to the really, I don't think, has been any accusations that have come out directly about Jess McCree. So it kind of feels weird, to say the least, that they're removing his name. It does still kind of feel like they may just be being spiteful more than anything else. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says the Fallout 76 project lead has departed Bethesda after 16 years. Says he's gonna take some time to reflect before choosing his next move. Yeah, having Fallout 76 be your last project is not going to do well for your career, I imagine. And it would definitely be questionable how much of that was his fault and how much was just ZeniMax's fault. Probably a lot of it was ZeniMax's. Here we have a game on Steam called Captures, which looks like it's a chess puzzle game, but I don't think I'd want to play that. $1.79 English only. I'm not going to go through all the games I have, but I'm going to try to go through a few of these. Here we have a game called Cat in Time, which seems to be a combination of a couple of puzzle games. This is $4.74 English full audio. I'll put that on the follow list. So we got that.
I pray that you will
because
be free from suffering.
Because the person disconnected. So let's go home, and didn't want to reload the whole screen, but whatever. But I wanted to make sure at this point we've gotten all the daily gold treasure chests for this event, which I think this event, it's still got a few days, but if I don't play over the weekend, I might miss out on some awards. Alright, 1 of 5. So we have obtained all the victory rewards that can be obtained. Let's just drag to make sure there's not more somewhere. But the daily golden treasure chest has been unclaimed, and more treasure chests of some sort are still collectible. Seems like the game was really throwing me a bone. And I guess I'm just looking for ranked win matches, and then I'll re-roll this. That's probably what I should have done earlier. So we'll hop in here and look for another possible quick victory. Next we have Myst on Steam, which this is the standard and VR version for $29.99, and this is about the 5th or 6th time Myst has been remade and released. And yeah, it's still Myst. It's still is the same generic layout of Myst. It does give you an excuse to go back and play Myst if you haven't played Myst in a long time. Otherwise, it gives you an excuse to play it for the first time. And last time Myst was really remade, it was the real Myst remake.
Pages of astonishing this new path.
Interesting. I don't know why this video is playing audio.
I realized the moment I fell into that.
It's playing audio when it shouldn't. Tab should be muted. Yeah. Anyways, there's no reason to put Myst on the follow list. I absolutely want it. If someone would be so kind as to gift Myst to me, friend me on Steam and gift it to me, I would love that, and I would play it very quickly, even knowing that I have not played the fourth or 5th Myst games yet, which would be the next games in the series for me to cover. It does seem to me, looking at this trailer, that the characters, Atris and such, in this remake may be CGI instead of being live action characters, which, okay, I think that probably is the right direction to go. Like, the creators of Myst using their own images to film themselves to be characters in the game worked for a long time, but if you want to continue this series and have the next generation of employees potentially making a Myst series of games, they can't rely on very, very old people at this point acting. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a idea out there at some point where they would make a Myst 2, that it goes in a different direction, in an alternate universe, alternate storytelling. You kind of have to break out of the story that was told as far as Myst, because it kind of went into the gutter pretty badly once you start to get to Myst 4 and Myst 5. They can certainly make a remake of Riven, and they probably should, but after that I would say a new Myst 3 that is completely different than Myst 3 Exile would be a thought. Assuming they can get the funding to do that, considering as Cyan, the company that made Myst, is also trying to have its own new series released outside of the name recognition of Myst, which in a lot of ways the name recognition of Myst as a game is just so established that you can't change anything without very much potentially angering the fandom. Next we have a game on Steam called Green Phoenix, which looks like it's a space fly around kind of dropper map clone. $3.59, English, German, and Spanish. Here we have a game called Anarchy Wolflaw Prologue, which just looks like a first-person shooter, and it's a prologue anyways. It's free to play, bunch of languages. Here we have one called The Ghost Hunter or Der Geisterjäger. Which just looks like a kind of asset flip maze around here. Dungeon crawler. $16.19 English only. Why is it in German then if it's only releasing in English? Here we have a Mighty FPS aim trainer, which we can immediately dismiss. Early access for no reason, $9.99. Here we have Elmarion the Lost Temple, which looks like a dungeon crawler of no interest. Early access, $8.49 English and Russian. Here we have a game called Sprocket, which looks like a tank sim game where you're just driving a tank or designing tanks. Early access, $19.99 English full audio. This is a game where it might actually be particularly good, but I have zero interest in a tank game, so I have to say no to that. Let's see. Gematsu has an Elden Ring hands-off preview with new screenshots. Hands-off previews are pretty useless because you just don't know how much of it's faked or CGI. Tales of Lumeria producers share messages on the announcement, which that's a funny way to say there's an announcement for an announcement. Saints Row Reboot, welcome to Ileso, I guess is how you pronounce that.
Don't underestimate me.
I think this is kind of a pretty good mix of characters. If you wanted 4 main characters, a white guy, a kinda Mexican girl, a African American girl, and then a African American guy, does not look terrible. And then you have a stereotypical, like, nerd. Maybe this guy's supposed to be flamboyantly gay. But for Saints Row, stereotypes are really what you would have to play into. Maybe a bit nerdy or frumpy as a character. And then maybe the haircut implies maybe gay on this character, but maybe not really. Maybe just straight up your badass antagonist character. Like, you don't have like a straight white male here, so maybe you throw some bone into that, or a straight white female. Maybe you throw a bone into that, because what you're really doing is you're hamstringing yourself to make the straight white male jokes too, because you could certainly play up that cliche fairly easily. So if you're a game like Saints Row that is going to almost certainly have to rely on playing up stereotypes, you're missing a stereotype or two. Moving on, we have Space Station Sprint, which looks like a generic first-person shooter, running and gunning and sliding. $9.99, English only. I don't see anything there that interests me. Here we have Strawberry Chocolate Miner 8AD for SS, which looks like nothing. This might have been an old game getting re-released, but even if it was, it doesn't look interesting. $7.99, English only. Game developer says the Apple is going to let App Store developers email customers about alternative payment options, which I think is probably an example of Apple throwing a bone to people before they get completely sued out of existence for being a monopoly. And Apple still would be controlling the system there and making it particularly inconvenient to go to a third-party site for alternate payment options. Here we have a game on Steam called Zyode Shadow, which looks like it's a platformer. I don't think there's enough here, or enough polish here, but I can't tell for certain. So I think I might put it on the fall list. It's early access, 10/19, English, allegedly full audio. I'm gonna put it on the fall list just to give it a chance. Do this, and then do this, I guess. And then do this.
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
Some sort of imbecile.
Unbelievable.
Let's see. Next we have a game called Qualia's Sweetscraft, which looks like it is just a platforming game with some anime girl cutscenes. It's $14.99, English and Japanese. It says Japanese full audio. Yeah, I don't see enough game here. It says it's a puzzle platformer game. I don't really see much puzzling going on. Here we have a game called Lamentum, which looks creepy, but it's a little zoomed out too, so I could see dismissing a game like this too. I always want to try a game that has this kind of creepy dark horror aspect to it, but so often they kind of suck. $14.39. This also is bundled with Vigil, The Longest Night. Bunch of languages. Alright, put it on the follow list. Here we go. We put
Thus, the world.
that there. And then I guess you heal that. And unless I'm going to evolve this, which I guess you do.
I'm through.
Mhm.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
Yeah, if I can actually focus and play the decks that can actually win, which clearly I just need to build more better decks. I just never really have interest or time to do deck rebuilds, and Shadowverse doesn't make it easier. Gemetsu has the Starfield Location Insights video, Aquila, Neon, and New Atlantis. Starfield, I believe, is the Bethesda, supposed to be
Is fighting in
the
despair
third
all
wing
you know?
of
Bow
Elder
before
Scrolls
Dark
and
Dragoon, ruler of the skies.
what was the other game? Well, it's supposed to be a Bethesda game that's long been in development. Yeah. It's Bethesda makes the Fallout series, they make the Elder Scrolls series, and then the space series. So there's space, sci-fi on Earth, and then fantasy as a 3-tier attempt. Here we have a game on Steam called Glass Smash, which looks kind of just like a generic cell phone game. $2.54, bunch of languages. You can skip that easily. This is an article from GameDeveloper.com. Welcome to Game Developer. Very pink backgrounds they're using there. And then immediately, we want you to accept cookies. I wonder if we start to see a bunch of that happening, really, where people jump from one website to another website's name and use that as an excuse to make people accept new terms of services. Yeah. Because I could imagine with like the GDPR regulations and just European Union regulations in general that there might be very much an attempt to just force people or trick people into agreeing to new terms of services that give more rights and allow for more tracking. Game developer, or it was Gamasutra at the time, had an article here. South Korea is axing its game curfew for minors. It's a decade-old curfew for young players at the end of the year. The decision comes from the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism and the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. Eliminating the curfew will require modifying the Youth Protection Act in the country's National Assembly. Under the law, developers who offered game services to players under the age of 16 between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. could be fined up to 10 million won, or which is roughly 8,000 US dollars. Which, yeah, actually doesn't seem like that's a terrible law. They also could have been sentenced to prison. That seems a little extreme. But instead of implementing systems to guarantee that not happening, The team behind Minecraft, for example, chose to alter its account system in South Korea to allow adult-only accounts rather than risk any kind of legal consequences. Yep. And that is definitely a problem with any country's laws, is that it could drastically affect people that aren't really doing business in your country or barely doing business in your country. Nobody wants to have a game that requires you to have a different office and different rules and regulations for every single country on the planet. But they do want the benefit of having a globally popular game, which doesn't happen that often. Moving on, Gametsu says Nobody Saves the World has been delayed to early 2022, and it has an online multiplayer trailer. What's funny is I just heard about this game and already it's delayed. Soundfall has a teaser trailer and screenshots, according to Gametsu. The Lara Croft creator has announced an adventure game called Dream Cycle for PC. Do we have a trailer here? Maybe. We'll go to its Steam page. So. Yeah, I don't know why my auto mute plugin is not working. This looks interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't really just a Lara Croft kind of style game, although it kind of feels like it's more of a first-person shooter crazy experience than that. Yeah, it's been a long time though since the creator of Lara Croft has probably touched even the Lara Croft game, so you'd have to compare his last work that he worked on, which is probably the Lara Croft before the reboot, to his next work. But yeah, Dream Cycle does look interesting, and since it's going to probably have a little bit more relevancy, I'll go ahead and put it on the fall list. I think we had already talked about this. 2K Games and Firaxis have announced a tactical RPG called Marvel's Midnight Suns for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. And again, I guess there might be a Steam page for this, so we'll load that. Marvel Midnight Suns, though, kind of seems like it's almost like a what if story. I don't know if this is gonna feel like what people expect to feel as far as Marvel, a Marvel experience. And see, like Doctor Strange here looks like a more comic book traditional Doctor Strange, whereas Miss Marvel kind of looked more like the movie. And Wolverine coming into the mix as maybe one of the only few characters is potentially interesting. I don't even know who this main character in the center is, though. Like, this is, I think, Ghost Skull. Some of these I don't recognize, though. It definitely feels like this is based off some kind of spin-off comic. And as a tactical RPG game, there's definitely a lot of room for questioning as far as just what that is actually going to look like or feel like as a game.
Harder, faster, holier. Clear a day keeps the doctor away.
Let's see, Midnight Fight Express launches in the summer for PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, which I think we had probably already heard about this. Yeah, this looks to be like it is a beat 'em up game. Doesn't look terrible. There might be something to this. It'd be funny if you can hear the audio playing on the webpage. That would really suck, because that means my whole alternate audio path setup is messed up, but I can definitely hear it, and I would prefer not to hear it. It's just another distraction. Gametsu has an article here. This, I guess, again, would be one of the last Gametsu things. The Outlast trials have been delayed to 2022. There's a gameplay trailer. The Outlast trials, I think, is a VR, like, horror game. This actually looks pretty good as far as a, like, almost Saw-esque condemned criminal intent idea of a game. Question is this multiplayer? Well, it's multiplayer, but it does seem to have single player also. Okay, there might be something to this. Like, if I was going to cover the Outlast trials, I probably should play Outlast and Outlast 2 and Outlast the Whistleblower DLC. Apparently there's also an Outlast Trinity bundle, which is just the DLC and the 2 previous games. I'm not sure how close any of the Outlast games really are to each other, or if they just happen to have a somewhat successful name recognition to them.
You're done for. Put your legs into each prayer.
Darn it.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
Here we have a game on Steam called Battle Steed Gunma, which looks like it's just a mecha game. Early access $24.99, English only. I'll put it on the follow list. Might be good. Let's see. Gametsu has Synced Off-Planet Story Trailer, a cooperative shooter set in a world devastated by technology. Interesting idea that technology would destroy a world. Again. This feels like this would maybe be focused on online co-op, but it seems to me from the look of it like it might be playable single player. Let's see if we can check out this trailer. Running and gunning and people seemingly getting turned into zombies through some kind of like zombie virus type thing. That's what I'm guessing happened. And then he can summon a golem to fight. Okay. What do we do here? Heal.
I shall give birth to a new world.
And what else can we do? Heal.
You're in good hands.
And heal. And I guess you call that a day. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle has the Doki V Pokemon style open world game. We wanted to check out this trailer of this newly announced game. Okay, looks cute. What I see here immediately is you've got a design that seems like it is very much designed for little kids. of varying ages, but what you're not seeing here is a moe anime style that is trying to specifically like gain the attention of Japanese kids in particular. This feels like a much bigger general appeal, but they'll throw you a bone apparently and do a magical transformation, and they'll throw you a bone and do mechs. It seems like fights just spawn in general, and the kids have all kinds of vehicles and transportations. Now, this is promising a lot, certainly here, and this kind of feels like a Monster Hunter for little kids, but this could easily not really work too, these teasers. Like, that they are definitely promising a lot. There you have them putting up like Chinese lanterns, and then you have kind of a Chinatown. This feels like what they've done is they've tried to create a half Western, half Eastern world, which is a cool idea. And I guess at a certain point you just can do full transformations and full stage transformations. This is very colorful. I could imagine it being like overstimulating for a lot of young kids, but that does seem like the target here. But I imagine young kids would love this. And I imagine adults will be willing to go along with the ride too for this, particularly if this is a PC game that is the equivalent of a Pokemon game. How big the open world is, it looks fairly big. I wouldn't be surprised if it's way bigger. This is from Pearl Abyss, who made the Black Desert MMORPG franchise, so there is an actual chance that this will actually get made and work as a game instead of this all being just like cutscenes. There's a possibility that there's a limited number of characters or Pokemon that you actually fight with. Seems like a significant amount of the fighting is coming directly from the kids to fight other monsters, and they're barely getting any support at all in their actual fighting. It's kind of like a Ghostbusters game in how you trap them. But yeah. Doki is the Japanese word for heartbeat. So you would say like Doki Doki, my heart is beating, my heart is aflutter with love, type, or excitement. So Doki 5 is theoretically saying that it is going to be a very exciting experience, and it definitely looks like that. Or Doki V, maybe not Doki 5. Yeah, but that does look very interesting, to say the least. Moving on, Gamatsu says Tales of Luminaria have been announced for iOS and Android. I think we had already talked about this. And then Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, the Jungle Book collaboration, begins September 3rd. And then, let's see, what is this article? Video Game Chronicle First Look, why Saints Row reboot is a step forward for the series. Volition is returning to the series' criminal roots for its 5th entry, which there's only 3 Saints Row games, so there must have been 2 DLCs. I know Gat Out of Hell, but I don't know what the other DLC would have been. You kind of have to, if you're going to reboot, go with the criminal aspect a little bit anyways, otherwise the whole series kind of falls apart. There still are no audience reviews on OpenCritic for Psychonauts 3, so it probably is not going to work. Or maybe it, yeah, nope. Come back 3 days after the game is launched. So I think the game is launched. I think you can play it now. I thought it had been 3 days, but if by Monday there are no audience reviews, I'll push it a little bit further, but I think I've already learned that it's not worth my time to have a tab open for a game, even if it is a fairly big AAA game. Just because that wastes space, and rereading the same page 3 or 4 times to try and get an audience review through Metacritic seems like I'm going on my way to see audience reviews, when really all I have to do is look at the reviews on Steam when I'm actually considering buying a game on Steam. Or, for my case, when I'm actually considering putting a game on the wish list on Steam from the follow list. Because once something's on my wish list, I assume that I've reviewed it enough that I'm willing to actually buy it. Let's see. Gamatsu has the Deer Simulator, your average everyday deer game. Adds a PS4, Xbox One, and Switch version. It's launching November 25th. I think this is probably just a goat simulator style game, which would have made a lot of sense, certainly, to have have more goat simulator style games. If anything, this might be even weirder or better designed and thought out than Goat Simulator. And then Gamatsu has Retro City Mash-em-up game Terror of Hemosaurus has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch and PC. Which, do we have a trailer on this to see what this is going to look like? More games like this may be interesting. This kind of does feel like this is just a direct clone of the old arcade game where you play as monsters beating up buildings. And it's kind of shocking how few games there are based on this concept. So I'll look forward to that when it actually comes out. And so what that does now is it puts us in a position where we are done with the news. I could talk about maybe 2 to 3 dozen more games that came out on Steam, or I can leave them. I want to leave them. We went 3 hours and 43 minutes. Oh man, I thought we were much closer to 3 hours at this point. So I'm just going to go down my Twitter feed and look to see if there's any new news that happened this Friday. And then I'm going to call it a day. Let's see.
Strike now. You know I said I will rise again.
So yeah, I'm scrolling down my Twitter feed.
The uncharted desert awaits.
Looking for any new news. I did have to follow on Twitter gamedeveloper.com or at gamedeveloper.com, I believe is the Twitter handle. They didn't even get at gamedeveloper. Which is weird because you would think that you could just port and rename your at announcement if you're a big enough content creator. Maybe Gamma Sutra wasn't big enough to be able to do that, or didn't even bother to research it.
You're in good hands.
Do we want to evolve anything? We can't. Yep, still scrolling down my Twitter feeds. Apparently, they're giving out the International Game Developers Association Awards at the moment. I don't even know if I really want to bother to talk about them. We might get a recap on Monday. I might just skip it completely.
By your will, O Lord.
Because, yeah, IGDA, in my mind, hasn't really created enough to gain any credibility. It really does feel like you're just, the industry is just giving the industry its own award without really even being critical, and really just kind of circle jerking themselves more than anything else. Or self-aggrandizing themselves might be a cleaner way to say that.
That was a fine bout.
Oh, the fluffy hug.
Best of luck to you.
You wouldn't.
Probably gonna lose here. And this will be our last game.
Strike now.
No more games.
Our bonds. I shall cradle the world once more.
See, Epic and Time Magazine debuted an interactive MLK Jr. exhibit in Fortnite, which is something. It's kind of weird, but it could be educational too. I'll talk about that. That's a gamedevelopers.com article.
Save yourselves.
You wouldn't.
Still scrolling, still scrolling.
Come now, let us play together. I shall take the front.
Miss Talina, get back.
I envy you.
So how many things did we get done? Nothing. If I could get one more ranked win, I could get one pack of cards. If I could get two more, I could get 2 packs of cards. If I get one more ranked win, I get some temporary gems. We made 0 progress as far as Forcecraft and Bloodcraft, and I just want to re-roll that. But yeah, we did make some progress, at least in getting the events, but that's about it. And I guess it's worth mentioning Destiny Child has moved over to its next big event. It just constantly gives you new events, and yeah, there's it's more of the same, which is to say it kind of is more of the content that that audience of that cell phone game is looking for, me being in that audience. That's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.